Sometimes, the things that keep us awake aren't loud. They're quiet thoughts, small, uncertain, often unspoken. A glance that felt off, a sentence you wish you could take back, a question that loops in your mind long after the day ends. This video is a space for those thoughts, for the fears that whisper instead of scream. Each one is a reflection of something deeply human, a soft truth that visits when the world goes still. If you're here tonight, maybe your mind needed a voice that understands. Let these thoughts be a companion in the quiet. You're not alone. Did I say wrong? At night, the smallest thought can grow enormous. You lie there, eyes closed, but your mind replays a conversation, a sentence, a pause. You said something earlier today, and now you're wondering if it came out wrong. Maybe your words were too sharp. Maybe they weren't received the way you intended. Maybe you didn't notice the way someone reacted, and now that silence is stretching. This fear, the fear of having said something wrong, is deeply human. It's not always about guilt. Often, it's about the fear of being misunderstood, of causing discomfort, of being judged when you meant no harm. Humans are social creatures, wired for connection. In prehistoric times, being rejected by the group could mean actual danger. That instinct to stay in harmony with others is still with us today. So, when you replay that moment in your mind, you're not being irrational, you're being protective. But the brain, especially when tired, is not a fair judge. It magnifies mistakes and rewrites neutral expressions into signs of disapproval. You become the prosecutor, witness, and jury over a moment that might have passed unnoticed by everyone else. You might try to recall their tone, their body language, searching for evidence. But memories at night are distorted by doubt. Your brain isn't trying to find the truth. It's trying to find safety. That's why you spiral. That's why you imagine worst-case scenarios where someone is hurt, upset, disappointed. It's not the event you're reacting to. It's the uncertainty. And uncertainty is uncomfortable. The truth is, most people don't remember half of what you said. They're absorbed in their own lives, their own worries, their own missteps. And even if you did say something awkward, most relationships are not that fragile. People can tell when your intentions are good. They forgive small stumbles, just like you do, instead of asking, "Did I say something wrong?" And try asking, "Did I speak with care?" Or, "Was I being honest and kind?" If the answer is yes, let it be enough. Let the thought dissolve slowly, because being human means being imperfect. And those imperfections are not what break us. They're what make us real. Let your heart rest in that. Why didn't they reply to my message? It starts with a glance at the screen, then another. Minutes pass, maybe hours. You sent a message, simple, thoughtful, maybe even vulnerable, and now there's nothing but silence. Your phone remains still. No typing bubble, no reply, no sign that your words reached anything but a void. So, you reread your message again and again. Was it awkward, too casual, too serious, too soon, and slowly? What was once a moment of connection becomes a breeding ground for worry. This is more than impatience. It's about expectation and the fear of being dismissed. In a world where instant responses are the norm, waiting feels like rejection. But communication wasn't always like this. Once, messages took days, even weeks. Now, the delay of a few hours feels like a statement. You wonder if you said too much, if you said something wrong, if you're being ignored on purpose. Your brain creates a narrative, and it usually doesn't end kindly. But here's a quieter truth. Most silence isn't personal. People are tired, busy, distracted. They read your message while in line, or at work, or halfway through another thought. They mean to reply, but life intervenes. And in that gap between intention and action, your imagination rushes in. It fills the silence with fear. You start overthinking not just the message, but yourself. Was I too needy? Did I make them uncomfortable? Do they even care? What you're really searching for isn't a reply. It's reassurance that you're seen, that you matter, that the thread of connection still holds. And yes, sometimes a reply means all those things, but not always. The absence of a reply doesn't mean the absence of care. It might mean they're overwhelmed. It might mean they forgot. It might mean nothing at all. The brain, in its search for certainty, often chooses the harshest interpretation. But that isn't the only possibility. Flip the lens for a moment. How many times have you left a message unanswered? Not out of malice, but fatigue. How many times have you deeply valued someone, even when you didn't know what to say right away? You're not the only one navigating the quiet spaces of conversation. We all do. So tonight, if the silence is loud, remind yourself. A pause in response is not a verdict. It's just a pause. Let the thread stay loose. Let your mind soften around the unknown. Let the weight of waiting be a little lighter. Am I behind everyone else my age? It creeps in quietly, this question. Maybe it arrives after a scroll through social media. Someone just got married, someone else bought a house, launched a business, had a baby, traveled the world, finished a degree. They're your age, sometimes younger. You start to do the mental math. Their age, their timeline, your delays. Suddenly, your own life feels like it's been running in slow motion. But behind is a word that only makes sense if we all agreed on the same map, and we haven't. There is no universal route for life, no fixed age for milestones. We each carry different responsibilities, start at different points, face different detours. Some begin with privilege, others with barriers invisible to the world. But comparison rarely factors those in. It just shows snapshots, cropped, filtered, presented as if they happened overnight. You begin to question everything. Am I lazy? Did I waste time? What if I made the wrong choices? But these aren't questions of ambition. They're questions of worth. And that's what stings. You fear not just being behind, but being less successful, less capable, less fulfilled. It becomes a spiral. Past decisions, missed opportunities, invisible deadlines. Yet the truth is, no one is on your exact path. Some people find their purpose at 20, others at 50, some bloom early, others grow steadily. You're not late, you're just alive, moving through the unfolding story that is uniquely yours. And speed isn't the only measure of meaning. Depth matters too. So does honesty. So does healing. Maybe you spent years unlearning what hurt you. Maybe your energy went into caring for others, surviving things no one knows. Maybe what you've built can't be posted in a square frame, but it exists, and it matters. Growth is not always visible. Milestones are not always measurable. Life is not a race, but a rhythm. Some days fast, some days still. Some years feel full. Others feel lost. But even the lost ones shape you. Tonight, if you feel behind, pause. Look not at the timeline of others, but at the ground beneath you. You are still here, still becoming, still allowed to change. The map is not fixed. The clock is not your enemy. You are not late. You are just not done. What if they misunderstood me? You said something, maybe a joke, maybe a truth, and then walked away wondering if it landed wrong. Not wrong, in fact, but wrong in tone. You wonder if they caught the context, or if their silence meant disapproval, a pause, a glance, a shift in their voice. That's all it takes to plant the seed of doubt. And now, long after the moment has passed, your brain is rehearsing it again and again, trying to fix something you can't replay. Being misunderstood is one of the most unsettling feelings because it strikes at the core of human connection. We want to be seen not just for what we say, but for what we mean. Language is a fragile bridge, built of words, but dependent on trust, timing, and tone. Sometimes, that bridge falters. You meant warmth. They heard cold. You meant concern. They heard criticism. And the worst part, you might never know which version they walked away with. So you imagine their interpretation. You rewrite their face in memory. You rehearse what you should have said instead. You want to clarify, to explain, to rewind the scene and deliver it better. But the opportunity is gone, and the silence that follows feels like a verdict. Not necessarily because they are angry, but because you're unsure. Uncertainty fuels overthinking. It pulls you into the loop of imagined consequences. You wonder if this one moment changed how they see you, if they now carry a version of you that isn't real. That idea alone, someone misunderstanding your heart, can feel like a quiet grief. But not every conversation is that fragile. Most people are not parsing your every word. They forget, forgive, interpret generously, and when they care, they ask, they clarify, they offer the benefit of the doubt. The mind tends to fill in gaps with fear, but reality is usually kinder than imagination. Even if someone did misunderstand, it doesn't lock you into a single identity. People evolve. So do impressions. So do relationships. If the misunderstanding matters and the moment returns, you can clarify. You can say, I hope you knew what I meant. And if it doesn't return, maybe it was never that big. Maybe the person already moved on. Maybe it's okay if not every word is perfect, because communication isn't about flawlessness. It's about intention, and your intention was care. Should I have done more today? The day ends, and silence returns. You sit still, but your mind keeps scanning. A quick inventory of everything you did, and everything you didn't. There's an odd weight in the question. Should I have done more today? Not always guilt. Sometimes just restlessness. A quiet, familiar feeling that the hours slipped away and you didn't quite catch them. You cleaned, you worked, you responded, you moved from one thing to the next. But still, it doesn't feel like enough. It feels like the day demanded more, and you came up short. In a world where productivity is often tied to identity, it's easy to equate busyness with worth. You scroll through posts of people achieving, building, thriving, and it feeds the silent pressure to always be doing. Rest begins to feel like laziness, slowness like failure. So, when night falls, and you finally stop moving, the question sneaks in, was I enough today? But this question rarely has a fair judge. Memory is biased. It highlights the undone tasks, not the completed ones. It forgets the interruptions, the small wins, the invisible work. It forgets the emotional labor, the energy spent just holding yourself together. Some days are not about output. They are about surviving, about healing, about tending to quieter needs that don't show up on to-do lists. The belief that you must constantly be improving, producing, proving, that belief can be exhausting. It steals the simple joy of being alive, of experiencing a moment for no purpose other than to feel it. Some of your most meaningful days won't look productive, and that's okay. So, when the thought comes, should I have done more? Pause and ask instead, did I do what I could with what I had today? Because that question is kinder and more honest. Your value is not measured in check marks. You are not a machine. Some days, just being here, still breathing, still trying, is more than enough. Am I too much or not enough? This thought doesn't shout. It hums softly, steadily, underneath everything. In a room full of people, during a conversation, after you've shared a part of yourself, you feel it whisper. Was that too much? Did I overshare? Did I take up too much space? Or maybe you shrink, go quiet, and the voice comes back. Did I say enough? Did I show enough? Was I enough? This question lives in the in-between. It's a tug-of-war between visibility and invisibility, vulnerability and restraint. And it often comes from a long history of being misunderstood, of being told to tone it down or to step up, of learning to scan others' reactions to define your own worth. Some nights, the replay begins, a laugh that felt too loud, an opinion too firm, a moment too emotional, or worse, a silence that felt like failure, a smile that didn't seem convincing, a presence that felt absent. Your mind paints over those moments again and again, coloring them with doubt. And in doing so, it creates a loop, a mental loop where you're constantly adjusting yourself, editing your personality like a script that must land perfectly every time. The truth is, you're not meant to be a perfect measurement. You're not a formula. There is no universal setting for being just right. You shift, adapt, express, retreat, and that's human. The people who truly see you don't need you to modulate yourself to fit their comfort. They don't need you to shrink or swell. They just need you to be. Being enough has never been about being flawless. It's about being present. Even your hesitations, your questions, your pauses, those are part of your presence too. But the fear is valid because the world often sends mixed signals. Be authentic, but not too real. Be confident, but not arrogant. Be soft, but not passive. The result is this quiet ache, a worry that you'll always be slightly out of tune with what others expect, that no matter what volume you choose, you'll be told it was the wrong one, and that ache follows you into the night, settling in your chest, turning over your memories until morning. It's exhausting to constantly measure yourself by other people's vague and shifting standards. You deserve peace from that. When the question returns, and it will, don't fight it. Sit with it. Gently, say to yourself, I am not too much. I am not too little. I am what I am. And that is enough. Even if not everyone agrees, even if the world hasn't learned to hold space for all the shades of you, let your truth be more important than their approval. Let it fill the room you're in, and let yourself rest in that fullness. Why do I always repeat the same mistakes? It's a question that creeps in not with a roar, but a sigh, when you're brushing your teeth, waiting at a red light, lying in bed with your eyes wide open at 1:47 a.m. You think about how it happened again. The same reaction, the same choice, the same silence when you should have spoken. You trace the pattern like a detective and a witness all in one, wondering why, with all your awareness, you still stepped into the same old shape. Mistakes have a strange gravity. They don't just sit in the past, they echo forward, pulling at our decisions like tides. And even when we think we've learned, something in us returns to them. Sometimes it's comfort, familiar pain, oddly, can feel safer than unknown peace. Sometimes it's a lack of clarity, not knowing what else to do in the moment. So we follow the well-worn path. And sometimes it's deeper. There are parts of us, often forged in childhood or shaped by fear, that believe this is what we deserve, or that this is the only way to be seen, to be loved, to be safe. So we repeat, not because we're foolish or careless, but because repetition is how the brain tries to resolve a loop. It keeps revisiting the scene of the crime, hoping for a different ending. That this time, it'll go right. That this time, someone will stay. That this time, you won't walk away. But when the outcome is the same, it adds another layer of frustration. Because now you're not just carrying the original pain, but also the weight of self-blame. But what if the repetition isn't failure, but a signal, a message that something inside is still trying to heal, still trying to understand, still waiting for you to pause and respond differently, even in the smallest way? Growth doesn't always look like bold transformation. Sometimes it's a breath taken before reacting, a sentence spoken instead of swallowed, a new boundary set, a pause where once there was panic. You are not broken because you return to old mistakes. You are learning, slowly, messily, honestly. And every time you notice the pattern, even if you don't stop it, you are one step closer to change. What matters is not perfection, but intention. That you're willing to see yourself clearly, that you're not giving up, that you're still asking the question, not out of despair, but out of hope that it might be different someday. So, when the thought arises, why do I always repeat the same mistakes? Remember, you don't, not always, and even if you do today, there's still tomorrow. That's what being human means. What if I never figure it out? It's the kind of question that slips in during quiet moments, when plans fall through, when goals blur, or when you're staring at a blank page, blinking cursor, or unopened email. It doesn't come with fanfare, but with fatigue, a soft voice that wonders, after all the searching, trying, failing, adjusting, what if there's no answer? What if I never become the version of myself I'm supposed to be? We're taught to believe there's a finish line, a moment where everything makes sense, where choices fall into place and direction appears like a neon sign. And until then, you're chasing a career that clicks, a relationship that feels like home, a project that justifies the sleepless nights. But what if that clarity never comes? What if the map stays vague, and all you have are foggy signs and half-lit roads? This fear runs deeper than uncertainty. It touches worth, because not figuring it out can feel like failure, like wasted potential, like standing still while the world moves forward. You compare yourself, scrolling past people who seem to know exactly what they're doing, where they're going, and who they are, and in comparison, your doubt feels louder, heavier. But maybe figuring it out was never the point. Maybe it's not a destination, but a rhythm, a way of moving through life with curiosity instead of certainty. You don't need a master plan to be valid. You don't need a perfect outcome to be worthwhile. Some people bloom in chaos. Some people build meaning slowly, piece by piece. And some truths don't arrive with clarity, but through experience, through living. Not knowing doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're still in motion. And motion, even without direction, is still progress. Every question you ask, every discomfort you sit with, every small act of choosing again, that's part of your path. You might not be able to name it yet, but it's yours. And if you never fully figure it out, if the big picture stays incomplete, that doesn't erase the beauty of what you did create, the connections, the moments of presence, the attempts, the way you kept going, the way you kept wondering. That, too, is enough. You don't owe the world a perfect answer. You only owe yourself the grace to keep exploring, to hold space for the unknown, and to trust that even without a final blueprint, your life still holds shape, meaning, and quiet victories you might not even see yet. Do they really care about me? Or are they just being polite? It's a quiet doubt that creeps in after a conversation ends, after a message is seen but not answered, or after someone says something kind but distant. The words were soft, the smile was there, but something in you wonders, was that real warmth or just social habit? Did they ask how I was because they care, or because it's what people are supposed to say? This question reveals the tender space where self-worth and human connection meet, because so often we rely on others to reflect our value back to us, to show us that we matter, that we're seen. When responses feel thin or timed, when kindness feels like obligation, it's easy to spiral. You start second-guessing every interaction, replaying tone and timing, reading between the lines of short messages and delayed replies. Your brain scans for evidence. Do they check in? Do they remember things I told them? Or am I just another box on their social to-do list? And underneath that scanning is a deeper fear, the fear of being tolerated, not treasured, of being included out of politeness, not preference, of showing up fully only to discover you were never really invited in. It's a feeling rooted in old wounds, times when your needs were dismissed, your feelings brushed aside, or your presence made to feel extra. But here's something quieter and truer. Not every gesture of care will be grand. Not every show of affection will look the way you expect. Some people express love awkwardly. Some care silently. Some forget to reply. Not because you don't matter, but because life clouds intention. Politeness doesn't always mean indifference. And kindness, even when routine, is still kindness. Still, your intuition matters. If you feel consistently unseen, if conversations feel one-sided, if connection feels like performance rather than presence, that matters too. You deserve to feel like more than a task. You deserve people who choose you, not just include you. But the answer isn't in overanalyzing every text or tone. It's in observing the pattern. Over time, care reveals itself, not through perfection, but consistency. People who care show up. Maybe not always fast or flawlessly, but with a thread of effort that doesn't unravel, and you are allowed to ask for that. You are allowed to seek connection that feels nourishing, not just polite. When the question rises again, and it will, pause and breathe. Not everyone will care deeply, but someone will. And your worth doesn't depend on who does or doesn't. It stands quietly, even when others are silent. Did I waste this year? It's a question that arrives quietly, often when the room goes still and your calendar feels louder than usual. You scroll through your photos, your memories, your unfinished lists, and you wonder, what did I actually do? What did I accomplish? The goals you set feel distant. The plans you made didn't unfold the way you imagined. And in that space between expectation and reality, disappointment settles in. We're told time is precious, and that every year should be marked by growth, by clarity, by achievement. But life isn't a checklist. Some years are for blooming. Others are for planting seeds you won't see sprout for a while. Some years are about simply surviving, learning to stay upright when everything feels uncertain. Measuring a year only by milestones misses the quiet, subtle ways you've shifted. Maybe this year you learned to say no. Maybe you let go of something that hurt you. Maybe you discovered that rest is productive, too. Maybe your days blurred together, but you still kept going. That counts. Existing through uncertainty, loss, or monotony takes strength. So does facing yourself every day, even when things don't move forward in obvious ways. There's pressure to turn time into proof that you were efficient, focused, evolving. But life doesn't always offer proof on schedule. Sometimes, what looks like stillness is slow healing. Sometimes, what feels like nothing is quiet realignment. You may not have built something visible this year, but perhaps you dismantled something that was never yours to carry. The fear of wasting time comes from the fear of wasting life. But time isn't wasted when it's lived, even when it's messy, even when it's unclear. You are not a machine meant to produce outcomes on a fixed timeline. You are a person, shaped by every ordinary day, every pause, every breath you took when things felt heavy. When this question returns, and it will, ask a gentler one. Did I show up for myself this year? Did I learn something, even if it came quietly? Did I keep going, even if I moved slowly? If so, you didn't waste anything. You lived. And sometimes, that's enough. Why do I feel tired even when I rest? You turn off the lights early, leave your phone untouched, pull the blanket close, and still, you wake up tired. Not just physically, but somewhere deeper. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. The kind that lingers in your bones, behind your eyes, beneath every smile. It makes you wonder, if I've done everything right, why do I still feel this way? Because rest isn't only about sleep, it's about safety. About switching off the endless scan for danger, for disapproval, for tasks left undone. And most of us don't get that kind of rest. We sleep with stress still running in the background, like an app that never closes. We wake up to notifications, obligations, and expectations. We scroll before we breathe. We plan before we feel. And slowly, the fatigue becomes a part of us. Emotional exhaustion wears the same mask as laziness. Mental fatigue shows up as disinterest. Burnout looks like disconnection. But none of these are flaws. They're signals. Your body is not just asking for more hours of sleep. It's asking for gentleness, for less pressure, for a pause that isn't guilty. Sometimes, tiredness comes from performance. The performance of being okay, of being pleasant, productive, put together. You go through the motions, wear the right expressions, say the right things, and inside, you feel hollow. That kind of pretending takes a toll, and when the world praises you for managing well, it only deepens the distance between how you appear and how you actually feel. Rest means being allowed to be real. It means you can exhale without explanation. It means you can feel what you feel without repackaging it into something inspirational. Rest isn't something you earn, it's something you need. And sometimes, what you need isn't sleep, it's to stop performing, to stop pleasing, to stop enduring. Just for a moment. You're not lazy for feeling tired, you're human. And the kind of tired you feel isn't always about how little you slept, but how much you've carried. So, the next time you wonder why the fatigue doesn't fade, ask yourself, what weight am I holding that sleep can't take away? And what kind of rest have I been denied? Not by my schedule, but by the pressure to be more than I have space to be. You deserve rest that reaches your heart. You deserve silence that doesn't scream responsibility. And when you allow that kind of rest, slowly, gently, the tiredness begins to let go. What's the point of all this effort? There are days when you try so hard, when you push through the tiredness, the confusion, the mess, and still, nothing feels like enough. You tick off tasks, answer messages, make plans, say the right things, and somehow it all dissolves into silence. The world moves on. No applause, no reward, no sense of arrival. And in those quiet moments, a question slips in. What's the point of all this effort? It's not a dramatic question. It's not despair. It's a soft, worn-out curiosity. A wondering that rises when you've been striving for so long that you can't remember why you started. And the truth is, effort without recognition is heavy. Purpose without clarity is exhausting. We live in a world that tells us to hustle, to optimize, to produce, and we do. But sometimes we forget what we're producing for. We lose the thread of meaning. We chase goals that aren't ours, expectations that aren't kind, timelines that don't fit who we are. This question doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're longing for something deeper than outcome, something more enduring than praise. Because effort isn't just about results. It's about care. It's about the invisible choices you make every day to show up, to try, to hope, even when no one sees it. And the truth is, some of your most meaningful acts may never be celebrated. Some of your biggest steps may feel like standing still, but there's still value in the trying, in the reaching, in the quiet courage of continuing, because you're not a machine built for efficiency. You're a person, and your effort isn't just a means to an end. It's a reflection of what matters to you. It shows where your heart leans, what you're willing to carry, who you're trying to become. Still, it's okay to question. It's okay to feel disillusioned. That doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you honest. And in that honesty, you might find a new rhythm, not one driven by urgency or approval, but by alignment. Maybe the point isn't always to get somewhere. Maybe the point is to live in a way that feels truthful, even when it's quiet, even when it's hard. So tonight, if you feel tired of trying, let that be okay. You're allowed to pause. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to not know. And in that space, without needing to prove anything, you might rediscover your reason. Not the loud, performative kind, but the kind that feels like home. Why do I miss people who aren't good for me? It's strange, isn't it? The way your mind circles back to someone who brought more pain than peace. Someone who didn't hold space for the gentler parts of you. Someone who made you feel small, confused, or never quite enough. And yet, on quiet nights, you still miss them. You replay conversations. You imagine other outcomes. You wonder if things could have been different. And then you wonder why you're even wondering. Missing someone isn't always a sign that they were good for you. Sometimes it's just a sign that they were familiar, that they occupied a space in your routine, your memory, your story. Human minds crave patterns, and people, even the ones who hurt us, can become patterns. Our emotional attachments don't always align with our logical understanding. The body remembers touch, the brain remembers routine, and the heart, confusingly, remembers the highs, the moments of kindness, intimacy, laughter, even if they were inconsistent or conditional. There's also the echo effect. The way silence after chaos can feel louder than the chaos itself. When someone who took up so much emotional space disappears, they leave a hollow, and that hollow aches, not because you want more hurt, but because your nervous system hasn't caught up to your healing yet. It's looking for what it used to brace against. It's easy to shame yourself for missing someone who wasn't good to you, but healing isn't binary. Missing doesn't mean wanting them back. It doesn't mean you made a mistake by walking away. It means you're human, capable of loving even in pain, capable of hope, even when it wasn't returned. That capacity is not your weakness. It's your strength. And the ache of missing is often just a phase, a necessary unlearning of a bond that once felt essential. You can miss someone and still choose yourself. You can honor the role they played without inviting them back in. And you can admit that certain parts of them felt good, even if the whole picture wasn't. The truth is, we often grieve the idea of someone more than the reality. We mourn what we hoped they'd become, what we wish the relationship could have been. So if tonight you feel a tug in your chest, if your mind drifts back to someone who left a bruise, let that be okay. You're not broken. You're unwinding old threads. And with time, those threads loosen, the memories soften, and your desire for peace becomes louder than your longing for the past. Why can't I forget that one embarrassing thing? It could have happened years ago, a slip of the tongue, a clumsy moment, a laugh that didn't land, a silence that lasted too long, and yet it clings. It replays in your mind at the most inconvenient times. Brushing your teeth, walking down the street, trying to sleep. You wince, you shake your head, you whisper, "Ugh, why did I do that?" As if shame could be exercised with repetition. The brain is funny like that. It holds on to negative moments with a stronger grip than positive ones. Evolution favored caution. Remembering danger, threat, or rejection helped us survive. But in modern life, social embarrassment gets coded like danger. So, even minor moments, a forgotten name, a weird joke, a visible blush, can loop endlessly. Not because they matter in the grand scheme, but because your mind flagged them as significant. And it's not just the moment you remember. It's the imagined judgment, the faces in the room, the pause after you spoke, the fear that others saw through you, formed conclusions, filed them away. It's rarely about what you did. It's about what you think it meant. I'm awkward. I'm not likable. I'm too much. I'm not enough. But here's a quieter truth. Most people don't remember. They're too busy recalling their own awkward moments, caught in their own loops. Your memory of that moment is vivid because it's yours, but to others, it was likely a passing flicker, if anything at all. Sometimes, what we're really trying to do is rewrite the past, replay it enough times in hopes we'll make it disappear or make ourselves feel better about it. But memory doesn't work like that. And healing doesn't come from erasure. It comes from compassion, from saying, "Yes, that happened. It was awkward. I felt exposed. But that doesn't define me. You are not the sum of your embarrassing moments. You're the sum of how you show up, learn, and grow in their aftermath. You are not frozen in time, stuck in a single awkward frame. You've lived hundreds of days since then, filled with laughter, kindness, creativity, moments no one else fixates on, but which shape who you are. So, if the memory shows up tonight, let it come. Don't fight it. Let it play. And then, instead of cringing, smile at your younger self. They were just trying, like you are now, still learning, still human. What if I peaked already and didn't notice? It's a quiet terror, not loud or urgent, but lingering, like a question left unanswered at the bottom of your chest. You remember a time when things felt brighter, when you moved through days with more purpose, more hope, more momentum. Maybe it was a job you once had, a version of yourself that felt sharper, more admired. Maybe it was a season when your friendships felt alive, your body stronger, your path clearer. And then the thought creeps in. What if that was it? What if that was your peak, and you didn't even know it while it was happening? The fear doesn't always come from vanity or ambition. Sometimes it's just the ache of nostalgia wearing a new disguise. You scroll through old photos, hear a song that belonged to another version of you, and feel the weight of all that's past. There's an anxiety in wondering whether the best of your life is already filed under memory, whether the rest is just repetition, maintenance, decline. But peaking is not a singular moment. It's not a mountain you climb once and descend forever after. That idea comes from highlight reels, from the way we glamorize youth, from stories that draw clean arcs, rise, climax, fall. Life isn't so neat. It bends and loops and stutters. Some of your most meaningful peaks might not look like success at all. They might look like choosing kindness when it's hard, starting over at an age you thought you wouldn't, loving someone better after hurting them, healing in quiet ways no one sees. Maybe you did peak at something, at that job, that version of you. But people don't have one peak. We have many, some loud, some invisible. And they happen when we're not looking, not striving. They happen in the middle of ordinary days, in small choices, in moments when we show up, even when it's hard, and they can happen again, tomorrow, next year, when you least expect it. So, if you're afraid you've already peaked, try this. Don't chase that past moment. Instead, look at where your feet are. What are you standing on? What do you still carry that the past gave you? Use that. Build from that. Maybe the best isn't behind you. It's scattered all around you, waiting to be noticed. Will I ever feel truly understood? There's a particular kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being surrounded by conversations, laughter, even affection, and still feeling unseen. You explain yourself, not once but many times, carefully choosing words, softening edges, offering context. And yet, something gets lost in translation. People nod, they respond, but somewhere inside, you know they didn't really get it. They didn't really get you. This thought often rises late at night, when there's no performance left, no audience to please. You wonder if anyone has ever fully understood what you meant when you spoke, if your fears were ever really heard, if your joy ever reached another heart exactly as you felt it. You start to question whether it's even possible for two people to truly meet beyond surface, beyond assumption. Part of this comes from how we're wired. Human minds are full of filters, biases, histories, distractions. We hear through our own experiences. We interpret through what we've lived. So even the most heartfelt expression can land differently than intended. This is not a flaw, just a reality. But that doesn't make it less frustrating, because all we want, deep down, is connection. The kind that says, I see you. Not just the you show, but the layers underneath. You might look back at times when you tried to open up and were met with confusion, or worse, dismissal. Maybe you learned to simplify yourself, to avoid the disappointment of being misunderstood. Maybe you stopped saying certain things altogether. The cost of explaining became too high. And so, you carry parts of yourself in silence, hoping that one day, someone will just understand without needing the map. But here's the thing. Feeling truly understood isn't always about finding someone who gets every piece of you immediately. It's about those rare moments when someone tries, when they lean in, ask more, stay curious, when they don't rush to define you. It's about trust, built slowly, over time, and it also starts with you, understanding yourself deeply, enough to speak clearly, even if your voice shakes, even if it takes time. You may not be understood by everyone. You may never be fully known in the way you imagine, but that doesn't mean your story isn't worth telling. It doesn't mean your thoughts aren't valid. It doesn't mean you're destined to stay hidden. Let your truth live. Even if it echoes in a quiet room, let it exist, even if the world only catches fragments. Because one day, maybe someone will catch the right piece. Or maybe, better yet, you'll recognize it in yourself first. Why do I feel so much but show so little? Some people wear their hearts on their sleeves. You feel like yours is buried under layers, folded, pressed, carefully hidden where no one can see it pulse. And yet, it pulses, loudly. You feel the room shift before anyone speaks. You notice the unspoken tension in a glance, the weight behind a word. Your inner world is rich, full of emotion and empathy and wonder, but the outside rarely matches. People think you're calm, composed, unreadable. They don't know there's a storm quietly forming just beneath your still surface. This dissonance can be confusing. You wonder if you're broken, or worse, if you're dishonest. Why do tears stay locked behind your eyes when you feel them gathering inside your chest? Why do words catch in your throat when your mind is overflowing with them? Why does your body remain still while your heart races through every possible scenario? Reaction, consequence. It's not that you don't want to express. Sometimes it's that you don't know how, or you've learned that doing so isn't always safe. Maybe you grew up in a place where emotions were too loud, too inconvenient, too much, where silence was rewarded and vulnerability met with discomfort. Maybe you were told to toughen up, to stay strong, to not let things get to you. So you did. You became the person who keeps it together, who listens more than speaks, who feels everything, but rarely lets it show. But just because others can't see your emotions doesn't mean they're not real. And just because your face doesn't mirror your heart doesn't make you cold. You've developed a quiet strength, a way of holding everything without making a sound. That takes resilience, but it can also be lonely. Because when people don't see your emotion, they might assume you're unaffected. And when they assume you're unaffected, they stop asking. They stop wondering what's going on inside. There's no single right way to feel, and no single right way to express. You don't owe anyone a performance of your pain or your joy. But you do owe yourself honesty. Maybe you start small. One moment of truth shared. One emotion named. One edge softened. not because the world demands it, but because you deserve to be known, not just guessed at. You deserve a life where what you carry inside doesn't have to be hidden so deeply. Feeling deeply and expressing quietly is not a flaw. It's a different rhythm, a different language. And the people who truly want to know you will learn to listen to the pauses, the gestures, the spaces between words. They'll learn your language if you let them in. Am I chasing something that doesn't exist? It starts as a vision, maybe a feeling, a sense of who you could become, what life could feel like, how peace might finally settle in. And so you chase it, not blindly, but with hope, a hope that the next step, the next milestone, the next person or place or achievement will be the one that makes everything fall into place. You work hard, you plan, you dream, but sometimes, quietly, a question forms. What if I've built all this around an illusion? What if what I'm chasing was never real to begin with? This thought doesn't come from laziness or despair. It comes from exhaustion, from trying so hard, for so long, to reach something that always seems just one more effort away. It's the weariness of always becoming and never arriving. And in those still moments, when you pause long enough to feel the weight of that chase, doubt creeps in. Is the version of happiness you're chasing really yours, or something handed down by someone else's dreams? Is success the goal or the disguise? Are you following a light or a mirage? You scroll past curated lives, hear polished stories, and wonder, is everyone else closer to their arrival than you are? Or are we all secretly running in circles, afraid to stop and find out that the destination we imagined was never there to begin with? You fear that if you let go of the chase, you'll drift, that your life will lose meaning. But the chase isn't always movement. It can be a trap, too. A way to keep yourself from sitting still long enough to hear what you truly need. Maybe it's not that the thing doesn't exist. Maybe it's that it exists differently than you thought. Not as a finish line, but as a quiet corner. Not as a grand success, but as a gentle rhythm. Maybe it shows up when you stop performing for it. When you stop measuring your life by its distance from a vague ideal. When you start noticing the small ways you're already living what you thought you had to earn. It's okay to ask, what am I chasing, and why? Because sometimes, that question is the beginning of clarity. Not all dreams are lies, but not all are yours, either. And the longer you run towards something undefined, the more you risk running past the moments that are trying to hold you now. You don't have to abandon your hopes, but you're allowed to pause, to reframe, to rest. The horizon isn't running from you, and you are not behind. What if I never find love? It's a whisper that sometimes grows louder when the world goes quiet. Not always desperate or dramatic, just present. Steady, sitting in the background of your thoughts like a shadow cast by something you haven't touched yet. You see love everywhere, in stories and songs, in people's hands held too tightly, in strangers who laugh like they've known each other forever. And then you look at yourself and wonder, what if that never happens to me? It's not about being alone. Solitude can be peaceful, even sacred. But the idea of never being chosen, never being deeply known and still accepted, that's a different ache. It's about the fear that something essential might pass you by while you're busy being strong, building a life, learning to be okay on your own. That love, no matter how hard you try, might not find its way to you. You think of the times you opened up and were met with silence, of the moments you wanted to say something but swallowed the words instead. Of the people you almost loved and the ones who almost loved you. You replay those scenes in your head like chapters that never got to finish. And the more you try to be enough, attractive enough, interesting enough, unbroken enough, the more love feels like a performance rather than a presence, a reward rather than a right. You start to ask, is it me? Am I too much? Too complicated? Too late? But love isn't a prize given to those who meet certain criteria. It's not a puzzle you solve or a mountain you climb. It doesn't arrive on a schedule, and it doesn't always come in the form you expected. And sometimes, it doesn't come from someone else at all. It grows inside you, quietly, through the way you treat yourself when no one's watching, through the patience you offer your fears, through the grace you give your own healing. It's okay to long for love. That longing is part of being human. But don't let it convince you that your life is incomplete without someone else's hand in yours. Love, when it comes, won't fill in missing pieces. It will recognize that you were whole all along. If you never find love in the way you imagine, romantic, cinematic, sweeping, it doesn't mean you missed out. It means your story took a different shape, one that may be quieter, but just as meaningful. You are not on a deadline. You are not behind. And in the space where love hasn't arrived yet, there is still room for beauty, growth, connection, and yes, even joy. Why does silence feel so loud at night? There's something about night that amplifies everything. The walls don't actually get thinner, but it feels like they do. The air isn't really heavier, but your thoughts seem to weigh more. And then there's the silence, not a peaceful stillness, but a strange kind of noise. It hums, echoes, expands until it wraps around your entire mind. It's not the absence of sound. It's the presence of everything you haven't said, everything you haven't faced, everything you've been running from during the day. During daylight, distractions soften the edges. Conversations, notifications, background music, passing cars. They fill the space where fear might live. But at night, the world goes quiet. And suddenly there's room for old memories to resurface, room for unfinished worries to grow teeth. The silence becomes a mirror, and sometimes what you see there unsettles you. You hear your own breath, your own heart, and it sounds like something foreign, too loud, too close, too exposed. This is when the smallest thought can turn into a thunderstorm. A fleeting worry becomes a full narrative. A minor doubt becomes a question of identity. You lie in bed, eyes open in the dark, and you start to listen to things you didn't even know you were carrying. Regrets, fears, uncertainties. They speak louder in the quiet, and not because the night is cruel, but because it's honest, because it offers no distraction, because it waits patiently for you to notice what you've been avoiding. But maybe the loudness of silence is also an invitation, a space where things long buried ask to be held. Maybe it's not a punishment, but a reckoning. You're not broken for feeling unsettled when everything goes still. You're just human, responding to the truth that sometimes only darkness reveals. And in that revelation, there's an opportunity to listen without interruption, to feel without judgment, to name what hurts, even if you whisper it into a pillow. You may not silence the silence, but you can soften its edge. A warm light, a familiar voice, a grounding breath, a gentle reminder that you're not alone in this strange experience of feeling everything at once. The night can be loud, yes, but it can also be a container, one that holds your chaos without needing to fix it. One that says, it's okay not to have answers right now. It's enough to simply hear yourself. So, the next time silence starts to swell and press against your chest, don't fight it. Let it speak. Let it pass through. Let it remind you that even in stillness, you are alive, and that means something. Am I too late to change? It's a question that waits until the world slows down, a whisper that rises when you're alone, scrolling through the lives of people who seem to be ahead, building, transforming, achieving. You think of everything you could have done differently, the decisions you delayed, the habits you couldn't break, the dreams you archived because reality was louder. And then it comes. Am I too late to change? Has the window closed without me noticing? Change is romantic when it's abstract. It's inspiring when you're watching someone else do it. But when the spotlight turns inward, it becomes terrifying. Because change demands honesty, discomfort, and often starting again from a place that feels too far behind. We're told that growth is always possible, but no one talks about the grief that comes with realizing you've stayed still for too long, or the fear that everyone else has already taken the good seats in the life theater, and you're just now arriving. But time isn't a race. It's not a punishment. It doesn't close off paths. You do. The truth is, you change all the time without noticing. With every book you read, person you meet, thought you challenge. Growth isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, like a shift in posture, like finally asking better questions, like deciding that tomorrow might deserve a different version of you. Being late assumes that life follows a schedule, that there's a checklist with expiration dates, but who made that list, and why do we believe it? The only real deadline is the one we create when we give up on ourselves. And even then, life has a way of reopening doors we thought were shut for good. You are not too late. You may be tired. You may be scared. You may be tangled in the weight of past inertia. But late? No. Because the moment you consider change, you've already started. It's okay if it's slow. It's okay if you don't have a plan. Change doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for willingness. And if that willingness is a flicker today, let it be enough. Feed it tomorrow. Trust that it can grow. The people you admire didn't arrive at their turning points on cue. They stumbled into them. They hesitated, doubted, restarted, and so can you. So, the next time you feel behind, remember, behind compared to what? You are not a storyline. You're not a delayed project. You are a living, evolving experience. You are allowed to begin again, as many times as it takes. Do they talk about me when I'm not there? It's a question that slides into your thoughts like fog, soft but hard to shake. Maybe it starts after a gathering, when the door closes and laughter continues without you. Or maybe it comes in the quiet space after you've shared something personal and suddenly wonder how it was received when you walked away. Do they talk about me when I'm not there? And if they do, what are they saying? There's something uniquely vulnerable about absence. When you're present, you can respond, clarify, laugh, deflect. But in absence, you lose control of your narrative. You imagine the worst. A comment misinterpreted. A story retold with the wrong tone. Your name carried in conversations you can't reach. It's not always about vanity. It's about the fragile hope that you're understood, that you're not reduced to fragments in someone else's version of events. This fear often roots itself in early experiences, of being left out, of hearing your name used as a punchline, of trusting the wrong people. And so, as adults, we carry this defense mechanism. assume the worst, prepare for it, protect ourselves from the sting of invisible conversations. But it's exhausting to constantly scan for betrayal in the shadows. You end up turning your own mind into a surveillance room, watching scenes you haven't seen, reacting to voices that may not even exist. The truth is, yes, people talk. It's human. But more often than not, what they say is shaped by their own stories, not yours, and the ones worth keeping around. They defend your name in rooms you've never entered. They carry your softness, your quirks, your kindness in their tone, not as weapons, but as acknowledgments. The cruel voices, they say more about the speaker than the subject. The judgment they pass is a mirror of their own discomfort, but you can't control their words. What you can control is the space you give to these imagined dialogues. The more energy you pour into decoding other people's conversations, the less you have to write your own. Let your life be shaped by intention, not paranoia. Let your sense of self be rooted in who you are, not in the ever-shifting speculation of others. And if the fear returns, as it does, don't feed it with imaginary scripts. Just breathe. Return to your center. Remember who you've been when no one's watching. When no one's talking, that version of you is the most real. And if your name is spoken, let it echo with truth, not fear, because the right people won't change their tone when you're not in the room. What would they think if they knew the real me? This thought doesn't knock. It lives inside the walls, quiet, constant, shaping every interaction from the inside out. It's there when you smile a little too quickly, when you nod instead of disagreeing, when you hold back a truth because it feels too raw, too strange, too risky. What would they think if they knew the real me? It's not just a question, it's a code we carry, a filter we apply to every version of ourselves we choose to show. The real me isn't always a single hidden truth. It's the complicated mix of things we worry are too much, too sensitive, too intense, too messy. It's the thoughts you edit before you speak, the history you leave out of your stories, the parts of your personality you dilute to fit the room. You shape yourself like soft clay, always adjusting to be more likable, less strange, more digestible. And sometimes, you do it so often you start to forget what the unfiltered version even looks like. But here's the twist. Everyone is doing this, in some form. Everyone is holding back something, an anxiety, a desire, a fear they believe will tip the scales of how they're perceived. We live in a world that rewards curation, not transparency. And so, we become editors of our own presence, polished, approachable, acceptable, but never quite whole. The fear behind this question is powerful. It says, if they saw all of me, would they still choose me? Would they turn away? And sometimes, yes, people will. Some won't know how to hold your complexity, but others will see your wholeness not as too much, but as something real, something brave, something they recognize in themselves. The more you reveal the parts you're afraid of, the more you find people who connect with your truth, not your performance. You don't have to bear everything, but start small. A truth told in a quiet moment. A boundary kept even when it's uncomfortable. A story shared, not edited. Let those pieces gather, like bricks building a foundation for a version of you that doesn't flinch under inspection. You are not meant to be a projection. You are meant to be known, fully, gently, slowly. And when the question comes again, what would they think if they knew the real me? Ask a different one. What if the real me is exactly what someone has been waiting to meet? Have I become what I used to fear? It's a question that doesn't arrive with a bang. It creeps in slowly, like light under a door. You don't notice it at first. You're just getting through the day, doing what needs to be done, becoming who you think you need to be. But then, in a quiet moment, maybe in the middle of brushing your teeth, or looking at an old photo, you feel it, a strange dissonance, a discomfort in your skin. And the thought follows, is this who I meant to become? Or have I, without noticing, stepped into the shape of everything I once promised I'd avoid? Maybe you feared becoming cold, and now you catch yourself being distant. Maybe you feared being stuck, and now your days look like copies of each other. Maybe you feared turning into someone who compromises too much, and you realize you haven't said no in months. We don't transform all at once. We inch toward things. And fear isn't always loud. It's the subtle recoiling from a life that feels off-key. The irony is, many of the things we fear becoming are not monsters. They're people who were once like us, tired, confused, hurt, or just trying to survive. And maybe we judged them too harshly before we understood what it meant to carry certain burdens. So now, as we face reflections of the very traits we swore off, it's not just fear we feel, it's grief, a mourning for a version of ourselves we thought we could protect. But asking this question isn't failure, it's awareness. It's your mind tapping gently on the glass, reminding you that you still care about who you are, that you're not asleep inside your own story. And that means you're not too far gone. Maybe this is the moment you pivot. Maybe it's the start of becoming not what you feared, but what you truly respect. There is no shame in change. Even if the path is crooked, becoming something you didn't plan for doesn't mean you can't course correct. The fear exists because you're watching yourself closely. That's a kind of love, a kind of hope. So, ask yourself honestly, what part of this fear is true, and what part is just a shadow from the past? What can you do differently? Not to punish yourself, but to return to a direction that feels like home. You're still writing your becoming. It's never too late to take the pen back. Why do I forget good moments so easily? It's strange, isn't it? How a single awkward conversation or a fleeting embarrassment can loop endlessly in our minds. But a moment of joy, a real, gentle, golden moment, can slip away like mist through fingers. You try to recall the exact sound of someone's laugh, the warmth of a hug, the way the light looked on a peaceful afternoon, and it feels distant, like a postcard from a place you can no longer reach. It makes you wonder, if the good moments are real, why do they vanish so easily? Part of it is the way our minds are wired. We're built for survival, not serenity. Negative experiences are sticky because they signal danger. Our brains hold onto them like warning signs. Good moments, on the other hand, are soft. They ask for nothing. They simply are. And because they don't scream, they don't stay as loud. The brain tucks them away, not out of cruelty, but out of habit. So sometimes, even in a life that's had love, laughter, and quiet beauty, it's the sharp edges we remember best. And yet, there's another layer. Sometimes, we don't forget the good moments because they weren't meaningful. We forget them because they were, because they mattered so deeply that their loss feels like a kind of ache, like something we're afraid to hold on to too tightly, in case it disappears completely. So, we distance ourselves from joy as a preemptive grief. We expect it to go. We train ourselves not to linger, and in doing so, we cheat ourselves twice, once by rushing through the moment, and again by failing to keep it close. But here's the quiet truth. The good moments are never truly gone. They live in the way your body relaxes when you hear a certain song, in the flash of a memory when a scent floats by, in the way your voice softens when you talk about someone who made you feel seen. Joy leaves fingerprints all over us, even when we think it's faded. It changes how we carry ourselves, how we hope, how we try again. So maybe the goal isn't to trap every good memory in a jar. Maybe it's to notice it more deeply when it's happening, to pause, even for a breath, and say, "This is good. I want to remember this." Not to clutch it, but to honor it. And maybe, when you lie awake wondering where the joy went, that whisper will come. It's still here, in the way you softened, in the way you stayed kind. Do I really know what I want? Sometimes, it feels like the question alone carries more weight than the answer ever could. You lie there, eyes open to the ceiling, tracing all the paths you didn't take, all the choices you hesitated on, and you wonder, was I ever sure? Or was I just moving because I was supposed to? Because everyone around me seemed to know where they were going, and I didn't want to fall behind. Wanting, truly wanting, is harder than it sounds. It means facing yourself honestly. It means risking disappointment, risking change. It means saying, "This is what I want," and then living with the echo of that choice. The truth is, we're not always taught how to want in a way that's our own. We're taught to want success, to want approval, to want what's predictable and polished. So we chase milestones instead of meaning. And after a while, the lines blur. Do you want this because it lights you up, or because it looks right on paper? Do you want it because it's yours, or because it's what you were told to want? These aren't easy questions. They require slowing down, listening, being still long enough to notice which desires are truly yours and which ones you picked up like souvenirs on someone else's journey. And then there's the fear. What if I finally figure out what I want and I still can't have it? What if wanting leads to pain, to failure, to judgment? So we mute the wanting before it grows too loud. We convince ourselves we're fine with whatever comes, that it's easier not to want too deeply, not to care too much. But that's not peace, it's protection. It's a quiet kind of resignation that keeps us from living fully. But wanting isn't weakness. It's not selfish or reckless. It's human. It's the part of you that's still reaching, still imagining something more. And even if you don't have a perfect answer, the question is worth asking, because every time you ask it, you peel back a layer, you get closer, and in that closeness, there's clarity, not all at once, but gradually, like light filling a room. So, do you really know what you want? Maybe not yet. Maybe only in pieces. But that's okay. Wanting is not a destination. It's a direction, a thread you follow, even when it tangles. Trust that. Trust yourself. The more you listen, the more you'll recognize the sound of your own longing. And one day, it won't be a question you fear. It will be a truth you finally get to live. Why do I feel lonely, even when I'm not alone? There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't depend on distance. It slips into crowded rooms, settles quietly between conversations, and follows you home even after a full day spent with people. It's the kind that makes you feel like a visitor in your own life, like you're present, but not seen. You could be laughing, talking, moving through your day, and still feel the ache of something missing, something not quite connecting. Because being around others isn't the same as being known by them. This kind of loneliness is subtle, but persistent. It grows in the space between what you show and what you feel. You might share your day, but not your thoughts. You might talk about the weather, but not your fears. And so, even when surrounded by voices, you feel muted, like your real self is somewhere just behind the surface, waiting for a moment that never comes. The worst part is that this loneliness makes you question yourself. Am I too closed off? Am I expecting too much? Why can't I just be happy with what I have? The truth is, connection isn't about proximity. It's about resonance. You can be inches away from someone and still feel miles apart if there's no shared understanding, no genuine exchange. Sometimes it's not about the number of people around you, but whether any of them truly see you, your thoughts, your contradictions, your small joys and quiet sorrows. And when that kind of seeing is missing, even the warmest room can feel cold. This doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. You crave depth, not just company. You want more than just being heard. You want to be felt, to be known in a way that doesn't need explanation. That kind of connection is rare, and that's why the absence of it feels so heavy. But here's what you can do. Start with yourself. Begin by showing up for your own feelings. Speak the things you often silence. Create the space you long for, even if it's just for you. Because the more you learn to be present with your own inner world, the more you'll recognize and seek out relationships that honor it too. You don't have to settle for surface-level closeness. You don't have to pretend lightness when you feel weight. The right people will meet you in that space, not always easily, not always soon, but eventually. So, when that feeling creeps in again, that lonely ache while sitting among others, don't push it away. Let it remind you of what you need, what you deserve. You're not asking for too much. You're asking to be seen. And that's a quiet kind of courage. Will I regret this path later? Regret is a shadow that often shows up long before it needs to. It creeps into decisions while they're still unfolding, asking questions that can't be answered yet. Will this be the right choice? Will I look back and wish I had turned left instead of right? It's a quiet weight that follows you even on days when you feel mostly sure, mostly steady, because the future is unknowable, and regret, real or imagined, thrives in uncertainty. This thought isn't about the big, loud regrets. It's about the small, slow ones that build up over time. Choosing one job over another, staying in a relationship a little too long or leaving one a little too soon, saying yes when you meant no, or no when you weren't sure. These moments don't feel massive at first, but over time, they echo in your memory, asking, what if? And that question can be paralyzing. It makes you second-guess yourself, not just once, but over and over, until you no longer trust your own compass. But here's something important. Regret often forgets context. It remembers only the decision, not the version of you who made it. The person who chose that path didn't have the clarity you have now. They were working with hope, instinct, limitations, and timing. They chose what made the most sense back then. That deserves compassion, not critique. You've never made a choice from the future, only from the moment you're in. And the fear of regret can sometimes do more harm than the regret itself. It can stop you from choosing at all. You hover in limbo, waiting for perfect certainty, which never comes. But life doesn't reward indecision. It rewards movement, even if it's messy, even if you course correct later. Most regrets aren't about taking the wrong step. They're about never stepping at all. So, when that thought comes, will I regret this? Try not to answer it with panic. Try to answer it with presence. Ask, am I acting in alignment with what I know now? Am I being honest with myself? Am I choosing based on fear or on hope? Because if your answer comes from intention and awareness, then even the detours become part of the path. And if regret does show up later, that's okay. It's not proof you failed. It's proof you grew. You learned something your past self didn't know. That doesn't mean the decision was wrong. It means you're evolving. Life is rarely about perfect paths. It's about meaningful ones. And the path you're on now might not be forever, but it's still taking you somewhere you need to go. What if I disappear and no one notices? This thought arrives not with panic, but with a strange stillness, a soft imagining, almost like a dream you don't want to admit you've had. You wonder, if I stop showing up, at work, in messages, in rooms I usually fill, how long would it take for someone to reach out? Would anyone notice a sudden quiet in the spaces where I once existed? It's not a cry for help. Not exactly. It's more like an ache for significance, for proof that your presence matters in the everyday noise. It's easy to feel invisible when life moves so fast. People forget to check in, to say your name, to remember what you're carrying. You scroll through feeds filled with curated smiles and laughter that seems to echo from lives more vivid than yours. And in the quiet, comparison starts to speak. It says, maybe you're forgettable. Maybe you don't leave ripples. Maybe you're just passing through, and nothing would shift if you were gone. But here's the thing. The world doesn't always reflect your worth back to you clearly. It's not that you don't matter. It's that we're all tangled in our own storms, busy, distracted, overwhelmed. People might not notice your absence right away, not because you're unimportant, but because they're carrying their own unseen weight. Their silence isn't always a measure of your value. Sometimes, it's just a reflection of their own struggle. You exist in more places than you realize. In memories, in routines, in the way someone hears your laugh when they read a message from you, in the space you take up in someone's day, even when they don't say it. Your impact isn't always loud. Often, it's quiet, steady, cumulative. It builds slowly in hearts and minds, in shared jokes and small comforts, in presence that felt safe. When the thought comes, what if no one notices? Try to remember that recognition isn't the only proof of connection. Sometimes, your absence is felt in ways people don't know how to express. And more importantly, your worth doesn't need to be measured by the reaction to your disappearance. It can be held by your own awareness that you are here, you are real, and you leave echoes, even if they return in silence. So stay, even when it feels like no one's looking. Stay, because your story is still being written. Stay, because you are not a question mark. You are a sentence that still matters, and you don't have to be loudly remembered to be deeply loved. When will I finally feel okay? It's a question that lingers at the edge of every long day, every restless night, not loud, but persistent. A quiet knock on the door of your thoughts. You've done the work, tried routines, therapy, self-help books, late-night journaling. You've shown up even when it hurt, smiled when it felt hollow, and pushed through when you didn't think you could. And still, this ache remains, this quiet wondering. When will it stop feeling like something's missing? When will I breathe and not feel like I'm just borrowing the air? Okay seems like a simple word, but it's a moving target. It shifts based on expectations, on mood, on the kind of day you're having. Some days, it looks like laughter. Other days, it just means you got out of bed. And yet, we carry this idea that one day we'll arrive at a place, permanent, stable, fully healed, where everything clicks and nothing aches. But what if that place doesn't exist in the way we imagine? What if feeling okay isn't a destination, but a series of quiet moments strung together? What if okay is something you build, not find? The truth is, healing isn't linear. There's no final scene where the music swells and everything makes sense. There's just you, and the life you shape one small decision at a time. And sometimes, you don't notice progress because you're living it, because healing feels ordinary. It looks like replying to a message instead of ignoring it. It sounds like telling a friend you're tired instead of pretending you're fine. It feels like choosing not to criticize yourself today. Those moments don't always feel profound, but they matter. They accumulate. So, when will you finally feel okay? Maybe you already have, in pieces, in the way you comforted someone else when you were hurting, in the day you took a walk just to clear your head, in the quiet decision to keep going. Maybe okay isn't a big declaration. Maybe it's a whisper, a breath, a moment where things feel bearable. And that's enough. You don't have to rush your way to peace. You don't have to earn your rest. You are allowed to feel messy, unsure, tired, and still be worthy of love, of belonging, of hope. The question will come again, because that's what minds do. But maybe next time, instead of searching for the answer, you can sit with it. You can say, I don't feel fully okay yet, but I'm still here. And that means something. If any of these thoughts felt familiar, you're not alone. You don't need to have the answers. You just need space to feel, to breathe, to be. Sometimes that's all we can do, and that's enough. Let these quiet truths stay with you tonight. Let them soften the edges of your mind. You're not broken for wondering. You're simply human. If this brought you comfort, consider leaving a gentle comment or sharing it with someone who might be awake like you. And if you'd like to wander through more thoughts like these, you're always welcome here. Good night,